Hi, it's Penny here, and today I'm going to be putting together my TBR for the month of March. As usual, I'm going to be trying to do my realistic reading plans where for each week I pick a physical book and an audiobook to read, and hopefully that means we're not planning too many books to read. And also for the slots that I have free once I fill this up with other plans, I'm going to be using my TBR machine website, which I made that spits out random reading prompts to pick some books. Today, 2 of those will be from my physical TBR, which is now just 3 books. If you watch my last TBR, you'll know that this should be 2 books now, but I did add 1 book during the month, and that is Artemis by Andy Weir. I don't know if I'm going to like this or not, but I picked it up from the free bin at my local library, and honestly I don't even know much about it other than it's got something to do with the moon, and it's by Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian. I did really like The Martian, and I did somewhat like his other book that I can't remember the name of, but I'll put a picture here somewhere. Oh, Project Hail Mary, that's what it's called. I think this one has more mixed reviews, so I don't know. We'll see whether this fits one of the prompts that we do. And you know what, actually, I'm going to do the prompts first because I just want to know what books we're getting. So let me bring up the website and let us pick the first prompt. So we have read a book with orange on the cover. Color ones are often easy. This one does have a little bit of orange text as well as a big orange background. This one's entirely blue, so that's out. I can't decide if this is orange on the front of this one or not. I think you'd call it orange. So I could choose between these 2. I'm not going to make the decision yet. I'm going to put it aside and we'll pick our other prompt because it's getting really hard now that I only have so few books. The prompts don't always fit. So the next prompt is read a book with a person on the cover. Again, this one's just a church. This one's the moon. This one does have I think this is meant to be some kind of statue head, but technically a statue person. So they could still count. So I think actually what we're going to do is we're going to pick the bone people for the prompt about a person on the cover, and then this one will be the one for orange on the cover. So as I said, I don't know anything about this, and I think I'm going to go into it blind. I think that's my approach with this one. Then the bone people, this one as well, I kind of don't remember what it's about other than I know it's by a Maori author and it's something to do with Maori mythology, and it's talking about Christian symbols here, so I think it's something to do... Why does it not have a synopsis anywhere? Anyway, I think it's something to do with Maori culture coming together with Pākehā culture, Maori myth and Christian religion coming together. Maybe some kind of a romance? I don't really know. It's kind of a classic book in New Zealand by a Maori author, and I've wanted to pick it up for a while, so finally, I will get to that. So that will fill up the last 2 weeks of my realistic reading plans. The other one I want to generate a prompt for will be the last week in the audiobook column. So let's get a prompt. For this, I've got to read a sad book. It is sometimes hard to know without having read a book whether it's going to be a sad book, but let me pull up my Goodreads want to read list and my library website and we'll see what I can get my hands on. Okay, so what I've come up with for this one is The Dream Daughter by Diane Chamberlain. My library does have the audiobook available. I am a little bit worried about this one because my understanding is that it is like a historical fiction with like a little bit of a science fiction twist, and I don't tend to like historical fiction. In fact, the last historical fiction I read, which had a little bit of time travel in it and I was excited, I ended up DNFing, so that's not promising, but I do know that a lot of people really love this one, and so I'm hoping I will too. The reason why I think it will be sad is it's about a woman who finds out that she's pregnant and her unborn child has like a heart defect, so that sounds depressing. But then her brother-in-law, who's a physicist, basically tells her that there is something that can be done about it, which I think leads to time travel, but I guess we'll see when I get to it. Alright, then let's quickly cover the other books that I want to be reading during the month. Firstly, I have Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, so I've been doing a big Cosmere Re-read basically all of last year, and now I am up to rereading Words of Radiance. I really loved my reread of The Way of Kings. I just found it to be highly rereadable in that there's so much that you learn about in this series that then when you reread it you can see all the clues that have been laid. So I'm hoping to have a similar experience with this one. Also, this one in particular tells the backstory of Shalon, which I remember really liking. So hopefully I'll really like it on a reread. And as well, like, I just feel like I've forgotten so many of the details about this. The whole reason why I started my Cosmere Re-read was so that I can finally read Rhythm of War and remember all the details. So hopefully that's what this reread is going to give me. And I'm not going to even try and describe this series because it's so well known, it's so popular, and it's also way too complicated. Oh, but I should also say, because this is a 1,000-page book, I'm basically going to have this for the first 2 weeks of the month. I'm hoping actually to start it at the end of February, but whether that will actually happen, I don't know. I might run out of time. But it's definitely too long to be a single week's reading, so we'll try for 2 weeks. Way of Kings did take me 3, so I'm not sure it's realistic, but that's what we're going to do. Then for audiobooks, in the first week, I'm going to be reading the audiobook of The Olympian Affair, which is the sequel to The Aeronaut's Windlass by Jim Butcher. In February, I did actually try to start this using the physical book from my library, and unfortunately, while there's some elements in this book series that I really like, especially the cats, there's this whole underground society of cats, and I just love the way that they're written. There's also these etherealists who do magic, and they're so eccentric. I love them. And the story is really all based around these etherealists and this power play that's going on that's led to a war between these different spires, and there's like this whole military organization around, and unfortunately there's a lot about the politics and the warships, and I just find those bits really boring. So I soft DNF'd the physical book, and I'm going to give it another go in audiobook. Will it work out? I don't know. But if I end up DNFing this again, then I'll just have more time for the other audiobooks on my TBR. So it's not all bad. So then in the second week, I actually have put 2 audiobooks in the slot just because they're both shorter ones. Firstly, I have, I think it's called Dark One Forgotten by Brandon Sanderson and Dan Wells. So a few years back, Brandon Sanderson released a graphic novel called Dark One about this boy that kind of like goes through a portal and ends up in this world where it turns out he's prophesized to fight this Dark One. It's kind of a very similar story in some ways to the Stormlight Archives, but also to the Wheel of Time, where this world is having this kind of circular thing where this Dark One comes into power. Although, to be honest, I've forgotten a lot of the details. But I think they were going to continue that in graphic novel form, but it hasn't had great feedback, and so what they've decided to do is write some stories in the world, but as audiobooks. Again, I don't really know what this specific audiobook is about, but I thought I would try it. And it's really short, so it should be fine. Then the other one I have is The Witch King by Martha Wells. This one is by the author of the Murderbot books. I haven't read the Murderbot books, although I have read the first chapter of the first one multiple times, and then just, even though I love it, it's just never fit into my reading plans, and I don't want to get into a new series until I'm ready. I'm a little bit worried because I thought The Witch King was a standalone, which is why I've picked it up. But in my audiobook app, it says it's part of a series. I can't see any other books in the series listed anywhere, but I'm a little bit worried this is going to be one of these ones where initially it looks like a standalone and then the author comes out with more books. And to be honest, it's been a little while since I looked at the synopsis, and again, I don't want to look it up because I want to go in more blind, but I think it's something like this guy dies and then somebody has kind of brought him back to life to use him for like political manipulations. That's probably completely wrong, but when I read it, we'll know the truth. And then we just have one more slot to fill, and that is for the third week. So in that week, I'm going to be reading the audiobook of Sharp Ends, which is the 4th standalone in the First World series. So we have an initial trilogy, then there were 3 more standalones, which I have read all of, and then I think Sharp Ends is just like a short story anthology before we finally get into the next trilogy. I am excited for that next trilogy, less excited for the short stories, but again, it is a fairly short audiobook, so I should be able to get through it really quick. I do like Joe Abercrombie's writing style. It's always a mix of really grimdark, gritty, realist fantasy, while also being fairly humorous and just having some really great lines that describe the world so clearly, even if somewhat negatively. So I'm hoping there'll be something in the short story anthology for me to love. So that's my TBR. Physical books is just these 3 books, which wouldn't be so bad, except that this one is so thick. I still think this should be doable for a month of reading. Although I kind of suspect that the font in this one is tiny. Yep, as I expected. So that's going to be hard. Also, this is an older book from 1983, so that I expect the writing will also be quite dense. But these other two, I expect the writing style to be easy to get through, even though they're longer. Actually, how many pages is this one? Like 440 pages, and this one's only 300, so actually this one's the shortest. Audiobooks, like there's quite a range between short ones and medium length ones, but nothing too long. So also I think it should be okay. Let me know if you've read any of these books, whether you think I'm going to like them, and of course check back in for my wrap up at the end of the month to see whether I did. Also let me know what you're excited to be reading this month, and do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.